Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's show is pre-recorded. I'm going to answer your questions and questions from Andy's group. Thanks to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, Aliyah Jamari, audio, and Lolita Ratchford, teleprompter. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Aliyah who's doing the teleprompter, and Lolita is doing the floor director. 2 weeks ago, the pre-recorded video was about the history of the banking cartel. It's time for us to reclaim our past. The banking cartel has been trying to hide its true role in our past. The banking cartel broke the link to the teleprompter, and YouTube tried to prevent me from correcting this. Moscow State University has a website with a new discipline that combines mathematics and history. This website reveals that the corruption in the international financial sector has been falsifying ancient history for centuries, and we've got a link to their website in the teleprompter. Last week, I made the point that the banking cartel has not succeeded in silencing me. I'm embedded in all of humanity. The wealth of the world, administered by the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, is with humanity and not with the lying banking cartel. The banking cartel attacks me, and it tries to suppress my information. I say to the banking cartel, and I say to you, that this only proves that we are stronger than the banking cartel. We deal in truth, and the banking cartel deals in lies. How am I able to keep faith with Jose Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos and all the others who have gone before and fought to restore humanity's wealth to us? I say that this is because of who we are. Reality manifests in what we know. We know love. We know infinite love. I fight the banking cartel with its own evil. And I retweeted that the banking cartel is their own worst enemy. The banking cartel deleted a tweet about when the global currency reset became inevitable. And you can see a link to that in the teleprompter. I speak for the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund because I've known these people for many years, and I can remind them when they're losing themselves. Kiyoshi Kodera said this when he represented Japan on the Board of Executive Directors of the World Bank. Quote, "We lose ourselves when we compromise the very ideals that we fight to defend." After leaving the World Bank in 2010, Kodera became Japan's Deputy Vice Minister for International Finance and is now at an international think tank called Overseas Development Institute. So where are the questions? Here, one question. What happened at Auschwitz, and why is it necessary to remember what happened at Auschwitz? Auschwitz was actually a uranium enrichment facility. Watch what happens to this truth. It's a touchstone for reality. I'm putting the information about Auschwitz on a link in the teleprompter. What is the collective unconscious? This has to do with the fact that if a critical mass of people understand that something is true, it becomes manifest in reality. It's a scientific fact that has to do with the way humanity is all interconnected in the way we think. Our brains function as modems in processing our thoughts. Scientists observed this collective unconscious in Japan in what they called the 100th monkey effect. This is because information in the collective unconscious becomes accessible to everyone and is transmitted to everyone. The banking cartel removed an Italian documentary about the way our collective unconscious learns about the corruption in the financial sector. This was called The 100th Monkey, or in Italian, La Centesima Scimmia. And I sent an email a few days ago to Monia Benini about the documentary. Dear Monia, YouTube has removed the English version of La Centesima Scimmia. Would you be willing to send me the link of the film with English subtitles, or do you still want me to try and find a way to distribute the documentary's English version? This documentary is of great significance at this time. As you may know, the likelihood that we begin to solve the problems laid out in the film through the exchange of currencies is over 90%, according to an accurate model from the United States Department of Defense. I am speaking for a coalition that is now in charge of the world's wealth, containing the world's monetary gold reserves. These resources have not yet been deployed, but they're likely to come on stream before the world lands in World War III. Thank you for letting me know. Sincerely. And I signed it as Acting General Counsel, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and as Overseer Mandate Trustee of the Global Debt Facility. And I'll read you an email that I got from Monia back in 2016. Reference, documentary. Dear Karen, I wrote to the filmmaker and he told me he could send you a private link of the film with English subtitles. He also asked me if you could help him find a way to distribute it in the U.S. Thank you very much in advance. Best regards, Monia. And then there's an email that I sent to her back in 2014. Dear Monia, I see the movie came out. I tried to buy it on Amazon, but it's not distributed in the U.S. Do you think I could get a copy or a link? And Monia, in 2013, wrote to me and said, Dear Mrs. Hudis, we would really thank you for the interview. We'll let you know as soon as possible when the premiere will be scheduled. Best wishes, Monia Benini and Marco Carlucci. And then this is an email from Andy, and it was sent on the 16th of March. Dear Miss Hudis, I was trying to see the Centesima Scimmia again from the link you provided, but YouTube message said this video is no longer available because the YouTube account associated with this video has been terminated. It's still available when going straight to YouTube, but only in Italian with no subtitles. Guess I'll be referring to my Italian dictionary, but that's okay because my Italian was getting rusty anyway. Parry on. And then I have a question. What are military extremely low frequency mind control scalar technologies? Because people use their brains as modems to think, it's possible to develop technologies to interfere with the actual thought processes, as these are transmitted from people's brains to the centers where thoughts are processed in the collective unconscious. Some people are resistant to this kind of interference, about 20% of them. Others can learn how to resist once they know that they can be attacked this way. I'm giving you some emails from last year about military mind control technologies. And here's an email in the teleprompter that I'm reading you from April 2017 to Thomas. Subject, your email of the 7th of April 2014. Those friends of yours are probably susceptible to the military extremely low-frequency electromagnetic technology and scalar technologies. What percent will we have accepting the reality of the global currency reset? Ultimately, close to 100%. Right now, we have critical mass, which means the reality is there. Of course, there are many in the majority who are mistaken about what's going on. They will ultimately catch on. Best. And then I signed it. And this is from Thomas, sent in 2017 on the 8th of April. Dear Karen, thank you for all you're doing. This sincerely comes from the bottom of my heart. I'm concerned by the complete unwillingness of even longtime friends to entertain for a moment an alternative look at the historic facts that you have brought to light for all to see. I support your efforts completely, but what percent of the world's population is needed to understand for your goals to become successful? So very thankful, Tom. And then there's an email from Joe that was sent in 2017 in April. Subject, thank you. Hello, Karen Hudes. First and foremost, I would like to thank you on behalf of the people of the world for your hard work and integrity in bringing the world's banking cartels into the light of the general public. I feel that at least some people, particularly those who have learned to reflect inward in regard to the pursuit of truth, have had an innate feeling of wrong when sifting through the history of our various nations. I'm one who has felt this way even at young age, but could never really put a finger on the cause. Moreover, on my few occasions in the U.S. court, it was clearly evident that judges don't view any civilian as, at the very least, competent without a representative of the so-called bar, and for obvious reason, after some study into the depth of corruption of the U.S. court system. Unfortunately, I've only recently discovered your series, just within this week, and have most likely barely scratched the surface of the wealth of information out there for study. That being said, are there any particular alternative new media outlets that you can recommend me? The shadow governments of the world and their news outlets have too catchy of headlines and seem to have infiltrated all of my previously considered truthful media outlets. Currently, there's one other subject which I would like to inquire about. The most recent airing of your series on the Banking Cartel, that was on the 4th of April 2017, made a brief mention on ultra-low-frequency military technology that can alter or change thought patterns. I believe you may have made mention about it on previous segments or other documentation as well, because I distinctly recall a 1-to-10 ratio mentioned of people that are not affected, but unfortunately don't recall the specific article or segment from which I've learned this ratio. With all that said, herein lies my inquiry. Would you be so kind as to share with me your resources of information for said technology? Thank you for your time and work. Sincerely, Joe. And then I answer that. Dear Joe, sorry, but I have no recommendation for you on alternative media. And actually, it's closer to 20% who are resistant to hypnosis. Here are some links to MK Ultra Mind Control, and I put that in the teleprompter. A Japanese journalist wrote a formal message on a brain tuner by Bob Beck. He says 95% of the people can recover the brain function within a month. Have you known about this device? Bob Beck, the physicist who made the EEG, made a brain tuner to help people who have problems. And Bob Beck says 95% of people can reverse stress-related symptoms like insomnia, addiction, depression within 3 weeks. And he's, you can see in the teleprompter what he said about his biotuner or brain tuner. Of the work that had been done absolutely establishing that any stress-related syndrome, and this is why the psychologists hate this device, the stress-related symptoms that are recognized are insomnia, addiction, anxiety, and depression. About 95% of the people who use these devices for a period of less than a month find complete reversal of these symptoms. And he continues, this kind of device can end the profits of psychologists and pharmacologists. He's also against medical politics, so he started to give away the technique so people can make their own devices or can buy something, according to his theory, inexpensively. He says he's not getting money from SOTA or the sort of company that sells biotuners, or brain tuners. And then there are some emails to and from Andy and his group on their questions about the global currency reset. It was sent on the 18th of March. Ray, questions from various people. Dear Ms. Hudis, because the group doesn't really meet about once a week, I didn't want to speak for everyone, but upon discussion with a couple of them, I don't think there's any problem to disclose the emails. So please use the letter I wrote with the 16 questions on the way you find helpful. I think everyone will appreciate that and get a kick out of it. Sorry for some of the redundancy in a couple of the questions asked. Best wishes always, and thanks, Andy. And then on the 18th of March, Dear Andy, thanks for your reply. I still don't know whether or not to include any response to your group's questions in the upcoming DCTV segments. Could you respond to this question? I'll wait for permission from you, your group. I see that I haven't responded to your question about the status of the heroes in the U.S. military who were fired for refusing to follow the command of the Banking Cartel to nuke U.S. citizens in Charleston in 2013 and to nuke Russia in 2015. This obviously gets to the heart of the global currency reset. I want to recognize the efforts of your group. Many things that I once realized then became concealed again with military scalar weaponry, and I must concentrate to access this information again. When many people learn these facts, it becomes very difficult for the humans who are operating this scalar weaponry, and it fails spectacularly. The collective human unconscious is much stronger than the scalar military weaponry. Humanity retains its wealth in the global debt facility. I've already dealt with the question about what's happening to the heroes in the U.S. military in the teleprompter on the 1st of August and in my tweet on the 7th of July 2017, and I've attached them to the teleprompter. And this is from Andy, sent on the 18th of March to Karen Hudis. Ray, questions from various people. Dear Miss Hudis, thank you for your response. I know you've got to be busier than ever. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Simple word of mouth is very underrated these days. I believe it's one of our greatest strengths in collectively discussing things. Thank you once again for answering our questions and continued best wishes for you and your work. And on the 17th of March, I wrote, Dear Andy, good questions. I'm getting ready for the upcoming DCTV segments, so I'll answer in all caps in haste. And so you won't see in the teleprompter what the all caps are, but I'll let you know when I'm making the comments. And this is from Andy. Dear Ms. Hudis, the group that I'm talking with over the last few weeks have informally asked some interesting questions, and since they're adding up, I thought I might send them to you for your analysis, rather than ask them individually. I figured it was probably best to cut to the chase and send them all, as I don't know exactly how they'd be prioritized. Thank you in advance, and for your continued efforts also. So here they are in no particular order. 1. Besides the 12 federal banks in receivership that are insolvent, are the other remaining 48 central banks also formally in receivership, and who is handling the bankruptcies in the respective other countries? And my response, we're all working together, and I can give you interim answers that must be vetted and ultimately answered by everyone. The World Bank and IMF are a cooperative that can handle the bankruptcies, since the assets on the stock markets are going to go to pay the valid currency claims. All the countries are going to have to figure out how much excess currency is getting written off. Also, because many of the claims are coming from corruption, we're all going to have a huge bookkeeping chore to resolve. And this is a question from Andy. It seems that Japan is poised to adopt the global currency reset, and issue their own Treasury-emitted notes. Is this correct? And if so, can you speak about the estimated timetable? My response: we're all working together, and I doubt that Japan is getting out ahead of any other country. And then from Andy: if the use of local currencies is another way to stop the money flow, interest, to the network of global corporate control, the one bank, the banking cartel, and if possible, could you elaborate on how the local currencies would create full employment? And I'm saying, read Silvio Giselle. The full employment comes from the local merchants. There's no interest because of the Islamic banking practices, which don't have interest. And then from Andy: some have asked if there are any supporting documents that mention the blockchain patents as being owned by Bloomberg. And then my response: not Bloomberg. I've not seen this anywhere. The patents are held by Edmund J.M. Dunn. And then I put in the teleprompter an email from Edmund Dunn, and I'll read it to you now. Subject: initial introduction and merger and acquisition proposal. Dear Ms. Hudes, I hope you're very well. I've recently taken an interest in your work, and I've been very impressed and equally saddened by the manner in which you've been treated. I'm the owner of the creative copyright of a technology commonly referred to as blockchain. I'm the GD son of an Irish family by the name of Kennedy. I'm writing to you from the countryside in Ireland at my family home, Camelot. I'm in the process of designing a gold-backed fiat cryptocurrency and debt facility, and I've found your work extremely helpful. Thank you. I'm aligned to the ethos of the Bavarian Illuminati, which I'm working extremely hard to reform. You may wish to review my credentials on LinkedIn. Well, Edmund Dunn tried to steal the world's monetary gold reserves, and he failed, so we're not dealing with him anymore. Now this is from Andy. Could you give a description and function of M1 so that we might better understand the true role Jose Rizal played when he was Superior General of the Jesuit Order? And Marcos, of course. And then I've shown in the teleprompter a diagram of M1, and maybe we'll put it up on the screen. Okay, and here's a question from Andy. If one of the counties in our state doesn't have a chief county executive, does the district attorney on the board fill that role? And my response: each county's governance will be up to that county. And then from Andy: will the International Legal Assistance Consortium bring pressure to bear on the American Bar Association to clean up the corruption in their own house? No. The legal profession is captive and corrupt. The entire profession. This is also true of journalists, accountants. The corruption in the professions is mind-boggling. And you can see on the screen there's a diagram of M1. And now a question from Andy. How are the investigations going regarding the theft of some of the gold in the Philippines with regard to the U.S. Marines, Lloyd's Insurance, and Lincoln Mutual? There are no investigations. We're going to have to get these underway, and laymen are going to have to get themselves up to speed because of the corruption in the professions. And then a question from Andy. What's the current situation with the Mint Council, Bureau of Printing and Engraving, Texas Lightfoot Militia, Safe Passage, etc.? These are all waiting for the banking cartel to concede. And question from Andy. In reference to the DCTV teleprompter on the 11th of, November 28th, how will the shares of the publicly traded companies be allocated once the bankruptcy proceedings are done? And I said that we're going to have to figure all of this stuff out. And then another question from Andy. Could you elaborate a bit on how the UCC is a bridge from the Admiralty law of the sea system imposed on us, and the return to the common law of the land, that we will have once we're free of the current system? The transition is going to be tricky, as there are lawsuits in courts that are going to have to be settled, and we realize, hopefully, that the judges are all agents of the banking cartel. And another question from Andy. What is the current situation with the struggles within the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, respectively, with the elements within the Bretton Woods group that are resisting the cleanup of the corruption, which is stalling, not so much, it's assumed, the actual deployment of the gold in the global debt facility, but rather preventing other information from becoming known, such as with the Secretariat of the World Bank, the tribunal, certain recalcitrant behavior on the part of individuals, etc. And then my response. There's going to be a sea change as people understand the centers of power are all corrupt. And then another question from Andy's group. Where are Major General Michael Carey, Vice Admiral Tim Giardina, Commander Heather Cole, General Dana Pittard et al., and what is their status? Are they going to be reinstated to their respective commands in view of the fact that the public knows that they were fired for courageously preventing the nuking of Charleston, that's Carey and Giardina, in 2013, and the refusal to launch a first strike against Russia in 2015, Cole Pittard. And then I've put in the attachments at the end of the teleprompter. And then a question from Andy. The question was asked, when, not if, the currency reset is well underway and the limits on exchanging the Federal Reserve notes are to be set, unless agreed to differently by the citizens, at $1 million per person, it's felt that some people who've been hoarding cash for whatever reason, mistrust in banks, politics, financial, might be leery of exchanging their Federal Reserve notes for the Treasury-emitted dollars, to be followed by the exchange into Orem containing notes, because they might feel that it's a trick to have them declare their savings or have their savings be stolen or lost in some way. My response. People are going to have to decide whether there's a limit to property. We've been talking only about currency. This is going to be a hard decision, and we're going to have to all decide on this. Maybe there'll be different decisions in different countries, and if so, what is this going to mean for immigration? These decisions don't have to be taken right away. I'm sure that you're getting an inkling of how complex these issues are. The buck stops here, however. And then a question from Andy. Oh, I see we're scrolling. We must be getting ready to do the outro. And of course, we're going to continue with questions and answers. And as you realize, the answers that I give are only provisional because I'm just embedded in humanity, and we all have to decide these things for ourselves. But one of the most important things is sequencing. We're going to have to figure out when we need to decide these things and how. Thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. We're starting to get the hang of working together to take back our world. Many things are starting to fall into place as we realize the depth of the corruption in our money system. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudes.